going to be very different from events you've seen before at the UN. This is going to be a very interesting discussion that we've brought to you. We're going to be thinking out of the box in a way. We're going to be thinking about how do we end violence against women and girls by bringing all of these different perspectives together. We have people from the dance world, we have people from universities, from poetry. So I'll be introducing our guests later. But as you know, starting this week, we're marking the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, as well as launching the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. Despite the international movement for the elimination of this scourge, violence against women and girls continues to be one of the most pervasive violations of human rights. And unfortunately, this happens in all corners of the world, in all countries, in all societies. This problem does not have a face. It affects us all. And there is an increasing evidence that a range of individual, community, and societal characteristics and conditions are associated with a higher risk of violence against women. Among these are gender discriminatory laws and policies, as well as social norms, behaviors and attitudes that condone such violence and promote unequal gender power relations. However, these are neither fixed nor inherent features of particular individuals or groups. Rather, they are shaped by social and economic forces and hence can be changed over time, and which is why we have all of you here today. Violence has many forms, including domestic or intimate partner violence, sexual harassment, assault, female genital mutilation, and trafficking. It has significant impacts on young women and girls, especially considering long-term multiple physical, sexual, and mental consequences of violence. UN Women and the Interagency Network on Youth Development's Working Group on Youth and Gender Equality have brought together today's dynamic group of panelists to bring focus on youth action and engagement to end violence against women and girls everywhere. UN Women's new Youth and Gender Equality Strategy, which you have on the back of your programs, aims to inspire and empower young women and young men as partners in achieving gender equality. The LEAPS framework calls for a strong focus on leadership of young women in all spheres, and that is something that has to be strengthened. Economic empowerment and skills development of young women. It also calls for action on ending violence against young women and girls. And this last A that you have in the LEAPS framework, it's an A on action on ending violence against young women and girls. And it is critical, not just for today, but because young women and girls must have safe spaces free of violence to thrive, to take full advantage of the opportunities for leadership, opportunities for economic empowerment that are available to them. The LEAPS framework has 3 P's as well, for the P, that is at the end. And 3 critical approaches to achieving gender equal societies, which we are excited to have our panelists speak about today. The 3 P's emphasize participation, voice, and partnerships with young women and young women-led organizations and networks, partnerships with young men and gender equality, and intergenerational partnership throughout the life cycle. The force and inspiration of our youngest leaders represent one of the most important opportunities to drive and accelerate progress on ending gender-based violence and discrimination. With today's event, we are excited to discuss some of the creative, innovative, and powerful ways from creative arts, media, technology, experiential learning methodologies that we can engage and empower youth leaders to take action to end violence against young women and girls. With that, I'll stop here. Before we begin and open up the panel, we have a very special treat for you. I'm going to ask you to put your hands together and make some noise for Steve, who will be doing something very special.
Thank you very much. How are you guys today?
Good.
Move over here, it gives me a little more room. I don't have to hover behind you. I'm very honored to be here, to have an opportunity to open us up a little bit today. I think a lot of what the panelists do, certainly what I do as an artist, is to recognize that to deal with so many of these issues, we have to sometimes move past the brain sometimes, engage the hearts, the emotions. Sometimes there's so much noise from so many places, and if we silence that and allow ourselves to feel and have empathy and compassion, that's where I think we start to see our solidarity, and that's when we start to be moved towards healing. So I hope this piece can be a part of that. So far, it has been. I want to thank Pat Shea at the YWCA, who worked to bring me to create this piece, along with my creative colleague, David Fichette, who's with us. We created and filmed this piece and put it online about 2 months ago, and it's had about 7 million views. And it speaks out about, thank you very much. And now we're at the UN, so not too bad. So I hope you enjoy it, and I dedicate this to all my best friends' daughters, and a hope to all my best friends' sons. I don't have a problem with pornography. I don't get upset when I see sexually exploitive commercials. In fact, those are usually my favorite ones. I mean, I don't know what her legs have to do with my hamburger, but I am in the drive-thru the very next day. I don't get upset when I see violent movies or images, not in the tiniest bit. I don't have a problem with jokes about women. In fact, I freely admit there are times where I sit back with my fellas and kick back, talk about some chick and how I wish I could hit that, talk openly in public places. I'm concerned if your kids laugh. I mean, it's just words. It's just jokes. It's just dudes talking ish that you never expect's going to get back. However, I do have a problem with violence and cruelty and rape and abuse. And even if we know it's just me, it's just you, it's just a few harmless jokes between me and my dudes, it still perpetuates a culture where it's easy to confuse the link between the jokes and the bruise, between her getting choked and what's just jokes between dudes. And if there is a connection between the things that I don't have a problem with and the things that I do, then perhaps I need to rethink my views on the way we view women and how many views sexually exploitive images get on YouTube. See, my best friends have beautiful children. And if what I have to do to keep their daughters from getting raped or harassed or abused is choose to accept domestic violence is a man's issue too, then I'll do that. And if their sons grow to be like the men that they see, so it's on me to live like the men I want them to be, then I will do that too. And when they are of a certain age, I will tell them this story I heard when I was young about this village being terrorized by lions. See, every so often in this village, villagers would wake up to find their beds ransacked, bodies torn, and for some odd reason, the bodies were always female. Panicked, the men of the village, they started sleeping in shifts, to make sure at least one man was always watching. Despite that, the lions came. Too worried to sleep now, the mothers crawled to the beds of their babies, and there, watching over them, they learned why the victims were never men, because on unknown nights, for random reasons, as the moon crept in, the fog caught in the branches, the boys and the men of the village became the very thing the women they loved feared most. So when I was young, I thought that story was about lions. It's not. See, when we're children, the monsters are under the bed. When we are adults, the monsters have moved. They are inside us. They fight us. They climb in bed beside us. And so to stay safe from danger, we raise our girls to believe they must avoid it. And we raise our boys to believe they must become it. And so they do. And then one day they grow up to discover they are the lions. They are the ones you're watching out for. They are the ones we ask her, what did you do? When we should ask him, what have you done? But we don't. And as if we can't blame him, as if it's her fault for failing to accept that being safe around men is not safe to expect. I mean, she got in the cage with the lion, so she deserves what she gets. And as men, we have to reject that mindset or the violence won't end. We have to accept that where it most often starts is in the hands and the hearts and the minds of men. And we are the lions time and again. And if we aren't the lions, we are on their side, too often standing proudly in defense of the pride, perhaps afraid that if we stand with women against the lions, we will ourselves be devoured. And so, ironically, to prove we aren't cowards, we become cowards. To prove we aren't weak, we become weak. To prove we are still lions, we become sheep, unwilling to do the one thing that must be done: speak. And our silence, it chokes as heavy as hands. It stings in every black eye where men stand. Violence lives or dies. And that is why to call this just a women's issue is a lie. We must be involved. This is a problem that cannot be solved with silence. We must speak. We must act. 1 in 5 women are raped by men. We must own that fact. 640,000 women and girls are trafficked for sex annually. We must own up to that. 3 women are murdered each day by men who say they love them. That fact is ours and ours alone. Domestic violence is ours to own. This is what we must understand. This violence ends where it starts, in the hands and the hearts and the minds of men, because we are the lions. Time and again,